Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. In the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about a couple of different approaches that we've been taking with teams regarding how to work with data and how to use it in day-to-day activities. We started off with looking at plan and ticket renewals and how to leverage that data along with CRM to build renewal opportunities. And last week, we started looking at how to work with the various data feeds that each of the individual teams might be working with and try to make some sense out of that data to try and bring that into the system and start to leverage it in different ways, whether that was looking at surveys or analytic data from live analytics or turnkey or different pieces like that. Today we're going to dive in and look at the data that we already have, our ticketing data, and try to start to make sense of some of our customer purchase information, not just at the season ticket level, but at the individual buyer level, and try to see if there's any other information that we can glean from this that we can leverage either at a management level when we're doing more higher level campaigns, trying to target customers with the right message, or even giving data to our reps that might make them a little bit more efficient in terms of being able to go after specific customers or specific groups of customers that they may be dealing with during the season or in the postseason to help make this whole process of targeting our customers and our fans with packages and tickets and promotions that might be the most meaningful for them in a more meaningful way. So let's start off by taking a quick look at maybe what we might identify as the problem. So there are a number of organizations that over the last several years have been spending much more time focusing on analytics. We're beginning to see renewal analytics and different teams individually even coming up with their own renewal risk scores, et cetera. But a lot of this focus has been on season ticket holders only. And we started to say, you know, yes, we definitely want to focus on the season ticket holders, but is there anything that we might be able to learn from other buyers and other groups? Is there other data out there that we might be able to glean from this and maybe want to focus on? What about those individual game buyers? What about the group and individual game suite buyers, or flex and mini plan buyers? We don't necessarily want to leave those guys out, and we might want to be able to target them end of season. If it's groups and suites, we may want to look at them from a forecasting perspective, or flex and mini plan from a forecasting perspective, and try and identify those people that we might want to target. We may also want to try and see if there are people that have particular buying patterns that we might be able to go after for specific types of products, maybe because we have a game that we want to sell or a series that we want to sell at some point in the season, or because we have different products that we might want to be able to target to different customers or fans at some point during the season. So a couple of examples that we've had from real-world examples with working with teams. One of our teams came to us with this problem of saying, hey, we have a series coming up, a visiting team, so it's a 3-game home series in late August. We have a specific team coming into town, and we have a set block of seat locations and price ranges, price blocks. And we know that we have a Friday evening game and a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon game. We're looking for people that might fall into that criteria. And how do we go about finding that? We know that we can go and find people that buy tickets in August. We know that we can go and find people that buy for that particular visiting team. The problem was trying to get that information in aggregate in a very quick amount of time. Like, who buys the majority of their tickets in August? Who buys more than 4 games to that particular opponent that maybe isn't a season ticket holder? So we're buying either group tickets or individual game tickets. So we need to know something about the segmentation of that particular buyer type and the types of tickets that they're buying. Who buys in those locations or within those price ranges? Who buys Friday evening games in August? Who buys Saturday or Sunday day games in August? Or who typically ends up buying those types of games? So we wanted to be able to target the customers by not just one of these segments, but by multiples, and maybe even looking at not just the intersection of these, but maybe even expanding it slightly to say, could we start to, as we're targeting these, can we expand this by looking at a subsection of a couple of these? Like, people that buy on Friday and Saturday afternoon games that also happen to buy in those price ranges, or people that tend to buy tickets for this opposing team that also happen to buy in August. So by looking at those cross-sections, we might actually find people that wanted to be able to come to or might be interested in buying those particular types of tickets. Another example was by putting two things together that wasn't easily accessible just by looking at the data. So who is a secondary market buyer? And based on some calculations we were able to do, maybe by looking at the face value that the seller paid for that ticket, who's paying significantly more than the face value for that ticket? And who's maybe spending, if they're coming to 1 or 2 games, maybe that isn't a big deal, but maybe they're coming to 6 or 7 games, and that gives us a selling opportunity to go to them, maybe get them even better tickets or get them onto a plan where they could be coming to more games, they could be buying direct from the team, and potentially even spending less than if they were buying everything through the secondary market. So we get a net add of a direct relationship into some type of a planned buying relationship where we wouldn't have necessarily had that before, and we end up saving that person a little bit of money in the process. Who's attending multiple games during the season that doesn't own a plan? So they're acting like a plan buyer, but maybe they don't know about the plan options that exist, or they haven't considered being a plan buyer, and we know that there are benefits to customers being a plan buyer in terms of loyalty, in terms of attendance, in terms of potentially being able to upgrade them to future plan sizes down the road. So we start to look at that, and we can start to identify those buying patterns and start to tie that out and target those people for something that might be valuable to them as well. And then being able to just look at summaries like my customer's total spend and my customer's total attendance. So being able to look at that, so if I'm a rep and I've got a set number of accounts that I'm managing, being able to look at that spend and attendance, so I can look at maybe people who aren't attending and identify that those might be customers that I want to reach out to because there may be some risk in the relationship there. So by having this information available to me, either in aggregate from a management perspective or in detail for my accounts, I can start to look at this and I can start to have these conversations with individuals and begin to target them for products that I already have to sell, for processes and for opportunities to introduce them to a new way of interacting with the team, interacting with the experience of coming to the games and being part of the overall fan experience that they may not have had considered in the past, and in generating that relationship with the fan that makes them want to come more, want to have that deeper relationship, and ultimately spend more money with the organization. So how do we get there? Even when we have the ticket and the plan data, it's sometimes difficult to get this because it requires aggregate summaries. And we found in most of the CRM systems that we've been working with, it's ultimately very difficult to get to those summaries. So the answer is, what if we build those summaries outside of CRM? And even if you're not using CRM today, if we build those summaries outside, we could still have access to that data so that you can then start targeting these customers either directly in CRM or outside your marketing systems. So we're going to break this up into 3 different sets of analytics that we're building for teams today. The first of which is our customer summary. And a quick example is right here up at the top, where we have a customer, fictitious customer, John Smith, and we'll have his account ID. For the current season, John has spent about $28,500 with us. We'll see that he has certain products. He's a season ticket holder, STH, and individual game buyer. And he's been a customer since 2004. We might end up showing some additional details here. So, for example, some teams want to know if this person has been flagged as a reseller. Other people want to know if he has paperless tickets, or if he might be a broker. Other teams might actually want to put a renewal risk score or other rating scores that have been summarized here. So by pulling this information, not only do you have the summary of spend, and this could come directly to calculations from the ticketing system or from various sources, from live analytics, from turnkey, etc., but it provides this single face summary when the rep is looking at that contact, but also when doing these aggregate purchases, you can quickly pull out anyone who is an individual game buyer, anyone who is a group buyer, and also be able to do things if we need to break this up, not just season ticket holder, but an 81 game season ticket holder versus a 40 game or 41 game or a 20 game, 10 game, etc. So being able to segment that and being able to pull those lists very quickly as opposed to having to just segment out solely based on all of the factors of the individual codes on the plan. So trying to make that a little bit simpler either for the reps visually or from a query perspective, or for management to be able to pull that information out. And so some of the real benefits of the customer summary are that visual representation of the client relationship. Being able to go ahead and see what products they own, their total spend, their customer sense, all at that account relationship level. Being able to segment those customers by product, and then being able to go ahead and add additional information in there, distance from stadium, reseller, broker, etc. They may want to be in there. This one's a pretty simple one and pretty straightforward, and most people get this pretty quickly. The next one's a little bit more complex. So this is what we call ticket purchase analytics. And there are a couple of pieces here. So we start off with the account and with the season. So we want to do this by account and by season. We then add in classifications. So this is the type of ticket that they're purchasing. Is this a plan and maybe the types of various plans? A group ticket, a suite, individual game suite versus a plan, a suite plan. Individual game ticket or some type of other ticket. And generally we take the others, that would be tour or parking or something like that. We put that into another category. We might just even strip those out completely from this, unless it was relevant. So some teams are selling up tickets for concerts or for other types of games, soccer, football, hockey, etc. And depending upon what they're doing, they might want to have those in a classification so that they can go ahead and remarket to those people on an ongoing basis. But the predominant ones are plan, group, suite, and individual game. We marry that with some financials. So the financials will be total overall spend, total games, average ticket, the average ticket revenue, average ticket cost, and then the total number of tickets purchased and the total number of tickets that were attended. So you can get an attendance percentage by that classification. So just at this level, in summary, for that account, we would say if the account had a plan, we would say for that plan, what was the total spend, what was the total number of games. So an 81 game plan would have 81 games, obviously. What was the average cost per ticket? How many tickets were purchased and how many were attended? And that calculation of attendance would be calculated throughout the season based on the number of games that had been played. So if they'd attended all games and it's game 40 of the season, it would be 100% attendance, not 50%. If they had both a 81 game plan, but they also were buying individual game tickets, let's say they bought six tickets to 3 individual games, they would have 2 records here, one for their plan and one for their individual game tickets, and it would show that with this other set of financials based on that individual game. We then segment that out, and here's where the real fun begins, by 5 different metrics. So we'll go and talk a little bit about each one of these in a little detail. So if we do it by game, we're rolling all of this up by individual game. So why would we want to do that? Well, if you're looking at the individual tickets, and depending upon the ticketing system, sometimes the tickets are stored at an individual ticket level, sometimes it's at a seat block. It's hard to tell how many tickets an individual account holder bought for a particular game. And this might be very interesting from a calculation perspective, particularly when looking at suites and individual and groups. So if you want to say, give me a list of how many people went to, or group buyers that went to more than 5 games and purchased on average 35 or more tickets per game, you would end up using, obviously, account and season, group, total games, total tickets, and this game metric, because this would end up enabling you to pull that out and get that list of group buyers out so that you could then go and target them for that. The game is it's really just letting you pull that piece out and say, in total, I want to see who's buying this at either for an individual game or an aggregate across all of the games. Let me see what that total is so that I can summarize that information out. If I do it by team, it's by opponent, so by my opposing team. So I want to see who goes to Red Sox games, who goes to Braves games, who goes to Orioles games. So whenever we're visiting teams in town, I want to know that, and then I want to be able to target the people that specifically buy to those games. Again, that's going to be interesting for people that probably not plan holders, where you're going to have the natural distribution of whatever games you have for the season. But for people that are individual game buyers or secondary market buyers, et cetera, that would be a much more interesting metric so that you can start to pull out the people that are choosing to go to specific games rather than the people that just get that because of whatever plan that they're in. For seat location, this is a newer one that we started to look at, and it is people that are buying in specific locations or giving reps the ability to go and segment by seat locations. So looking for people that are buying higher price seats, and we can do this, we've chosen seat location, but this could be by price code or price scale, or by particular section, et cetera. The seat location is more of like a seat, some parts call this a neighborhood. It's an aggregate of sections. So you might be able to tie that down to a particular set of 5 or 7 sections in the stadium to be able to identify that that is where that person is buying, or on average, that is where they're buying their seats. And then the last one is by day of week and game time, and these two are actually combined together. But looking at things like, do people tend to buy on a specific day of the week? Are they buying weekday games? Do they have a preference for weekday versus weekend games? Do they prefer day games versus night games? Do they buy weekday day games versus weekend night games, et cetera? So that you can very quickly be able to go back and pull a list of saying, give me a list of people because I'm trying to find people that want to go to games that I have this Saturday and Sunday game. I'm looking for people that tend to buy that afternoon weekend day game and versus a weekend night game. And I want to target those specific people that might be individual game buyers or group buyers that I could go and target for that. So I'm getting people that have a buying pattern of buying those specific games and targeting them with something that they might be interested in. Now, these obviously aren't the only metrics that we are limited to. There are other metrics that we could put into this solution. These are the ones that the teams that we've been working with have found the most helpful and the most obvious. But with every team, we're going in and making slight tweaks to this, adding additional parameters, adding or removing a parameter that might be not be as applicable to that individual team. So we're working through this and tailoring it to each team and sharing the results so that if one team says, hey, we thought about this, we can go back to the others and say, would that make sense to you? And we can add that in for each of the others. So what are some of the benefits to this? Well, coming back out of ticket purchase analytics, it's pretty much coming back to these examples I gave before, of being able to try and sell those tickets for that late August game that we're identifying and looking at the cross-section of those. So being able to query and segmenting those lists of customers and look at that wide swath of our customer base and identifying who might be best targeted for filling in those seats. It also allows us to, because we can build these segments and generate those cross-sections, we can use it separately or in combination to include or exclude those specific buyers so that we can target the right message to the right customer. What we're finding is by taking this targeted approach as opposed to a shotgun approach, we end up having a much greater success rate and response rate in terms of not only targeting the customer, giving them something that they're actually interested in and interested in buying, so that we ultimately end up having a satisfied individual that is looking at it and is happy with what we're offering them and is not necessarily racing to get off of a mailing list because we're sending them just broad spectrum mailings about buy a ticket to this game. And the lists, if we end up using this within the CRM system, these lists can be used and created inside the CRM system using some standard tools. so advanced finds and standard query tools, so even reps, and we do have clients where the reps are actually going in and building their own lists, so and segmenting their own customers using these demographics and these analytics. So it's really helping the reps to go after the data themselves, as opposed to having to wait for someone in management to go and build a list and tell them what to do. The third part that we're building on is secondary market. And so we've been taking the data, historically, obviously, that had been from StubHub. Now it's StubHub teams are buying it, or Ticket Exchange. And we are taking this and segmenting it by account and season. And then we're adding in two sides of the coin. If they're a seller or a buyer, we're looking at, on the buy side, how much they're spending on secondary market tickets, what is the average ticket price, the total number of games they're buying, the total number of tickets they're buying, and then their over-under percentage. Pretty much the same idea on the selling side, how much have they sold, average ticket sale price, total games, total tickets, and the over-under. The over-under is going to tell us the comparison of, on the buy side, what they paid for it compared to the face value, or what they sold it for compared to what they paid for it. And we're doing that both as a dollar value, average dollar value, as well as a percentage basis. This is helping the reps, and again, from a marketing perspective, to go out and find customers, ideally on the sales side, anyone who might be selling for less than face value, because that might identify someone who might be at risk for renewing. And on the buy side, anyone who's buying at significantly over face value, because that might be someone that you could target directly and maybe be able to go after and sell something, either a package or a plan or individual game tickets, and get them into some type of direct buying relationship, as opposed to going always directly to the secondary market. So it opens up a new channel and relationship to that particular fan or that particular customer, go directly to the team. So some of the benefits of this are, obviously, as we've been talking about, identifying the sellers who are selling at below face value, the buyers who are above face value who could buy direct, and repeat buyers who could become potential plan buyers. So the ultimate goal of this is to build, as I've been saying, that relationship with the fan, with the customer, and to identify that target within the audience, within your base, so that you're identifying the right person and presenting them with the right message that will resound to them, that will be applicable to them, that they will then understand and be able to respond to, hopefully in a positive manner, but will make it feel like the team is listening directly to them and approaching them and knows them, knows their story, knows their buying habits, knows what they're interested in, and is now listening to them and engaging them in the conversation of why I want to be a fan and why I want to come back to the stadium. So these are some of the things that we've been doing already, and that we've been engaged with teams in building. I'm going to pass it over to Curran, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the next generation of tools and ideas that we have in terms of new thoughts and new ideas around taking us to the next step. So Curran, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. So as Richard was saying, kind of looking at the next step, what we see as kind of that next logical stage in being able to find new customers, maximize our business with potential new customers, as well as incremental increases from existing customers, kind of bringing them to the next level. So for the first example we'll look at is, we're going to talk about a customer Richard mentioned a little earlier, which is we have a regular ticket buyer who's purchased individual tickets to 4 different games in the last season. We've got a game in early season in April versus a kind of a lower end team, not very popular opponent, looking at a couple of summer games in June and August against mid-tier and low-tier opponents, and then a Saturday in September towards the end of the season against a rival, kind of a Tier 1 opponent, hopefully during the the pennant race. So we look at these 4 games and we see that there are 3 Thursdays and a Saturday. So what do we know from looking at this? A pretty oversimplified example, but what can we see? We see that the customer likes Thursdays for whatever reason. Maybe it's a, it's a personal thing. Maybe it's the day that they get out of work early. Whatever it is, customer likes Thursdays. And then they're also in for maybe a weekend afternoon game, maybe weeknights, but they're looking at that game that matters, important game. They're a big enough fan that they'll come outside of their normal routine to come see a good team towards the end of the year. Of course, there's other variables here, more specifically the opponent, time of game, but in general, this is kind of the thought that we're looking at. We also want to know how far in advance they purchased, was it a last-minute thing, and those kind of extras, but just kind of keeping it simple, this is what we're looking at. So what we want to know is, do we have a mini plan? Do we have maybe a 6-game plan that we could sell to them? Certainly that's something that's going to come up during the season push after renewals. We're looking for new customers, but it really helps. We think it really can help the efforts of the reps if they know exactly where to go with the first effort. What do we talk about the first effort? We've got 10 different 6-game packages, but let's look at the one most likely to be of interest to the customer. We've got one that's got 6 Thursdays, and this is kind of a repeat here, you see, but we've got one that maybe has 6 Thursday games throughout the season, and that, maybe the customer isn't aware that they only like Thursdays. Maybe it's something that's just happened by accident because that what works out for them, but that's kind of that next level of analytics, being able to predict what the customer will like, being able to kind of know what will interest them, what they like to purchase, what games they'd like to go to, maybe before they do. And it really can increase the success. When we've done this on a smaller scale, or we've done, whether it's with renewals, with a more advanced renewal score, selling the right plans, we certainly see sell-through rates increase, and I think we can do that as well with people who haven't purchased plans before. So not only do we have someone now with a renewable mini plan, or at least a mini plan that maybe they want to get next year, but also you've got them coming to 2 more games than they otherwise would, and you can increase ticket sales that way. If we look, we kind of look at going the other direction. We now know that if we have a customer that's got a couple of games, we can sell them a plan that we've got. But something we've also talked to some of our partners about, and we've been looking at a little bit, is working in the other direction. So let's say we've got a set of mini plans, 3-game plans. We've got one that's 2 soft games, and then maybe an early season versus a geographic or natural rival. We've got other plans that have 2 soft games and a different hook game, whether it's a prime opponent or it's towards the end of the season, or maybe it's the summer popular Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon game in the summer. This is the kind of the basic plans that we'll have as a team, that we'll have as an organization looking to sell. But something we base that off of basically is the ranking of games. Often we'll see it's just 3 or 4 people in the ticket office getting together, whether it's a little analytical or just anecdotal, being able to rank games, figure out what they think the most popular games will be, and often, at least in my experience, that's pretty accurate. But what we do is we build plans based around that, but interests change year to year, always a little surprise here and there in terms of what turns out to be popular, what turns out to be not very popular. Opponents maybe aren't doing as well as you thought they would, and suddenly that game drops in interest. So what we think we should be doing is looking towards what are those purchase habits for maybe individual buyers where a game that we did not think would be very popular is becoming a much more popular game either this season or maybe looking at 2 years together. So if we look at the information year over year, or we look at it this season, we can see, how about this? We've got a whole group of people who are looking for, who are buying for whatever reason way above our anticipated pace for a day in May against an opponent that we really didn't think was going to be very popular. They're not very good. For whatever reason, people are of interest there. Maybe they have a new acquisition people want to see. Maybe there's an influx and a transplant geography, so people like to see the team. I mean, whatever it is, it certainly happens, whatever the reason. But now we've got a very popular game that's a standalone. It's not part of any kind of package, and it's drawing people. What's that logical step? And we think that working in reverse and being able to create another mini plan, another 3-game set based around the hook of this new game, which we never would have thought before. Maybe it would have been a soft game before that we packaged in to try and sell. Maybe it's just one that we forgot. But if we take that game now in May against a poor opponent and are able to move it into a new 3-game plan with 2 other soft games, now we're getting increased buys to those other soft games, and we're able to maybe increase sales on this May game as well, because we're pushing it a little more in calls. We're mentioning these little mini plans we've got, and kind of marketing it a little bit more. We tend to market the mini plans more than individual games, of course. So if we've got this plan and we kind of move it into the new plan, we've got a new push, and now we know both who we can contact if we're looking year over year. Maybe there's somebody who bought this game last year that hasn't bought it this year, but the interest is still there, and we can reach out to them, or we know that this is going to be something that we want the reps to be mentioning and saying, hey, this is another plan we've got that might be interesting to you as well, and talk about why. If it is that acquisition, mentioning the star player that's just, or the rookie that's coming in, or something like that to hook that a little bit. But I think in general here, it's neat to be able to look at both directions, both finding the customers for the plans and the products you have, but also creating products around what the customers want. And that's something that doesn't happen very often, and certainly not on a short-term basis. It tends to be more long-term, but it's definitely something to think about. We think that there's a great kind of room for success for a lot of teams to think about that.
Great. Thank you, Karen. So we've been trying to show a bit through this in this presentation is how you can use the data that you have to extend a little bit beyond what we kind of think of on a day-to-day basis. I know so much is happening during the course of the season of just trying to deal with the day-to-day, trying to deal with all the challenges of working with the schedule and all the things that have to go on during the normal selling cycle. And hopefully some of these ideas might spark some interest and some thoughts in your own minds around how you might be able to leverage data, how you might be able to rethink of working with it and leveraging it so that your teams, your sales teams, and again, management might be able to look at this and be able to segment a little bit further, simplifying the process of finding the right customers, but also in the whole process of being able to target customers with that right message to get something that is overly or targeted and very relevant to the customer, with the interest of building that relevance to them so that they can respond positively by buying more tickets, attending more games, being a better fan or a more engaged fan, and partner with the team. And that's the ultimate goal here, is to build that loyalty and to build that relationship with the customer where they feel like they are well known by the team and they are part of the family, so to speak, so that they continue to come and have that experience, that fantastic hospitality experience that the teams are trying to engender every time there is an experience, a game experience at the stadium. We have one more webinar in this series that we're going to be presenting on service activity plans next week. This is where we're going to take a look a bit at looking at direct outward activities such as touch points and benefits that might be done during the season, and building up a plan of these so that we can look at the specifics around tracking activities, tracking touch points, tracking benefits, and turning that around so that as we're tracking these, we can come up with a plan for what that tracking should look like, how we know we're on target for actually achieving our goals around the tracking of these, and ultimately getting to the point where we say, yes, we're reaching the right people, we've identified this, and hopefully being able to use that information all the way back to where we started in terms of our renewals. So being able to see, we wouldn't want to do this for every single fan, but for our most important fans, typically our season ticket holders, that we are giving these benefits to, or hitting up with these touch points when we're doing in-seat visits, et cetera, is this having an impact on our renewal scores and on our renewal rates? Are we able to stem the tide of the natural course of risk? So we'll be taking a look at that next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And as always, we're very interested in hearing what you have to say and your thoughts. If you have questions about this or about anything else, please feel free to either call or email Current or myself. Our contact information is here on the screen. And we would be happy to talk to you and to answer any questions you might have about this or any of the other presentations. Thank you very much for your time today and for participating, and we look forward to talking to you either over the next couple of days or seeing you on the presentation next week. Thank you.